And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersey Joe. How are you?
Good. It's raining here. We got floods. We got tornado warnings. So New Jersey's getting some badly needed rain.
It
So,
came through here a couple hours ago.
okay, you didn't have tornadoes though, did you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, good. All right. Well, it's for those just to catch up, today's the 21st of July. And we'll be publishing this on Wednesday, the 22nd. And here's what we're going to try to squeeze in today.
Jersey
Well,
Joe, before you get too much into that, there was an important event that happened last week that I didn't know until after I published last week's show, is that we have hit 200 episodes.
200 episodes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
200? Oh my
Yep.
goodness. And do you realize that 30 minutes an episode, that's 100 hours of episodes. And of course, you know how long it takes me to prep for each 30-minute show?
Like 8 hours.
Well, close to 2 hours to prep for a 30-minute show. And I told you this before. One of my favorite quotes is from Mark Twain, who said, "Sorry," who started a letter to a friend. He said, "Sorry, this letter is so long, I didn't have time to write a short one."
Yeah.
So for me to get everything I want to talk in about 30 minutes takes a lot of review and cutting and editing and um, there's a word I'm looking for, starts with a C, um, in terms of being concise. But anyway, we'll get to that. Anyway, before I waste any more time trying to think of that word on the tip of my tongue, um, here's what we're going to try to talk about. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. We'll tell you which mayor of which major U.S. city is threatening to arrest the Prime Minister of Israel if he comes to visit his city this September. Can you imagine saying, "I'm the mayor of the city and I'm going to have my policeman arrest you if you come to my city"? Can you imagine
Yeah.
how stupid you have to be to say that? All right.
Yeah. How does that work?
All right. We'll talk about how that would work, by the way, what that would look like. Stupidest thing I've heard. We have a runner-up to the stupidest thing I've heard a week. And we'll tell you which airline is allowing passengers to change their chosen arrival airport to a different airport city at no charge, and why they are saying, yeah, if you want to change your destination airport, we'll let you do that at no charge, and we'll tell you why. That's the runner-up to the stupidest thing I'll tell you all week. Um, we'll tell you how New York City's rent control regulations are making that city's housing shortage far worse than it actually needs to be. We'll tell you about a federal court ruling that happened last Friday in New Jersey that overturned New Jersey's long-term ban on the sale of what it deemed to be so-called assault weapons and, quote, high-capacity magazines, and how the governor of New Jersey reacted to that court ruling. Were you aware of that?
I read an article about that.
Yeah. We'll play a clip describing how Seattle's new socialist mayor is trying to deal with the mess that she helped create. We'll tell you how one U.S. city is turning solid human waste from their wastewater treatment plant into money-making product. And I'll ask you if you would use it after I tell you what it is. We'll tell you where 3,000 armed teenagers gathered for 5 days and how many of them got shot by the end of that week. Time permitting, we'll revisit. And we a couple of weeks ago we talked about the price of postage going up and how much the
Yeah.
post office was
Mhm.
losing. Well, we'll revisit that and compare it to the cost of what it takes to mail a letter in the United Kingdom. And our taxpayer relief shot this week is from Charleston, West Virginia, where a road rage victim shoots and kills the driver of the other car who chased him down and then got out of his car and tried to attack him while he was still sitting in his car. All right. So here's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani is threatening to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he comes to New York to address the UN General Assembly in September. Now, he's basing his authority to effect that arrest based on an arrest warrant that was issued by the International Criminal Court in The Hague for alleged war crimes. And here's a clip of him from an interview with the New York Times, um, telling why he would do that. Here we play the clip.
In September. I believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu belongs in The Hague. He's a war criminal who has been charged by the International Criminal Court.
Mamdani is a fierce critic of Netanyahu and has repeatedly referred to Israel's war in Gaza as a genocide. Israel has denied those allegations.
What does the law allow you to do?
That's an active conversation with our legal department in seeing what the prospects are we have here in our municipality. However, what we've seen at the national level is a desire sometimes to write your own laws, to go outside of the bounds of legality. That's not something we have an interest in.
Well, let me ask you a question. Say you're a New York City police officer, and the mayor says, you know, Netanyahu's gonna be in town tomorrow, and of course Netanyahu has diplomatic immunity and travels with an armed security detail. And you're a cop, and he says, "I want you to go down to the UN, and when Netanyahu gets out of the car, I want you to arrest him on the sidewalk." If you were a cop in New York City, what would you say to that order?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't they need a an arrest warrant from a judge, first of all? And like you
Well,
said, he also has diplomatic
what he's saying
immunity.
is that the International Criminal Court in The Hague has already issued an arrest warrant, and therefore he's going to take it upon himself to enforce that arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court in The Hague in Brussels. So
Yeah.
he's using that as a justification. So assuming he's crazy enough to go forward, that if you were the police officer that he said, or the precinct captain, he said, "I want you to send your guys down to the UN, and when he gets out of the car in front of the UN, I want you to have your men arrest him." And of course,
I'm curious what the police commissioner of New York City has to say about this because,
Jessica Tish.
through
By the
the
way, she's part of the big one of the big hotel. She's independently wealthy. She's from one of the big hotel chains. She doesn't need the job. Uh, but can you imagine if you're a cop and, and they send you, and he's surrounded by like a couple of guys from Mossad
Mhm.
with guns, and they say, "Yeah, go arrest him." Yeah, I'd like to see how that works.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, that's got to be the stupidest thing I've heard all week.
Mhm.
All right, all right, let's move on here. All right, so here's the runner-up. So I don't know if you heard, but on July 9th, Palm Beach International Airport in Florida, which is where Trump flies into, because that's where his Mar-a-Lago is closest to.
Yeah.
So when he flies down, on Air Force One and they land at Palm Beach International Airport, the governor of Florida officially changed the name of the airport to President Donald J. Trump International Airport. And that's
Mhm.
not unusual. We've got Reagan International, we've got Bush International down to Houston.
Mhm.
We got Reagan, Orange County Airport. We got a bunch of airports named after presidents. So, but for those passengers who have suffered from Trump derangement syndrome, they said if you want to switch your arrival airport
Oh, jeez.
to a different airport, like Miami or one of the other, Fort Lauderdale, we will allow you to change your ticket to a different airport if you don't want to fly into President Donald J. Trump International Airport.
Just because the airport name, that's
Just because it's
ridiculous.
been renamed to President Donald J. They didn't have that name when they booked the ticket, but now it has the name. So they're saying if you booked your ticket before the name change and you are going to be psychologically stressed because you're flying into
Oh,
Trump.
brother. That's that's ridiculous.
And plus, think about, so if you do change your airport to Fort Lauderdale or Miami, you're going to add, a good extra 45 minutes of commute
Mhm.
from where you arrive to where you want to be. So anyway, that's the runner-up to the stupidest thing I've heard all week. All right. Rent control regulations. I was stunned by this. Now, of course, New York City has rent control, which means
Yep.
you can't raise the rent. And 2 weeks ago, they had the big thing where the rent control board said, no, we're going to not allow any rent increase, or like 1% over 2 years. Um, as a result of that, do you know how many, well, even before that, do you know how many vacant apartments there are in New York City?
I think there's a lot because a lot of people moved out during COVID.
Yes, but under the rent guidelines, unless you bring them up to code, like including handicap, in other words, you have to
Mhm.
change out the sinks to the handicap level sinks. If you have a four-story building without an elevator, you have to put an elevator in.
Mhm.
And and if you're losing money or not making any money, you can't afford to spend. Some landlords estimate 50,000 per apartment to renovate them to bring them up to code, and they say, look, we can't afford to bring these apartments up to code when we're losing money on every apartment. So this number blew me away. 57,000 vacant
Wow.
apartments in New York City.
Wow.
Can,
That's a
can you
lot.
imagine what would happen to rental rates if all of a sudden 57,000 apartments came on the market?
Oh, I mean, rents in Manhattan and all over New York City are already expensive, but yeah, they would certainly skyrocket.
No, they would come
Oh
down.
no, they would come down. Yeah.
Yeah, if you dumped 57,000 apartments on the market,
Hmm.
because you're right, they're paying 3,000 or 3,500 a month for a one bedroom or for a
Yeah.
studio.
Studios.
A two bedroom is 6,000 a month. Um, yeah, but again, so New York City is its own worst enemy. The landlord just saying, look, we'd love to bring these apartments up to code so we could rent them, but we
Hmm.
can't afford to invest the money because we'll never get the money back. So they're basically saying we'll just sell the building or turn them into condos.
Yeah.
57,000 vacant apartments.
Yeah. That's a lot. A
And I've
lot of
got a
people
link to
moved out during COVID
yep,
and
and
never
I've got
came
a
back.
yep, never came back. And I've got a link to the notes, by the way. If anybody wants to read the full story, you can just Google 50 New York City
Mhm.
57,000 vacant apartments. All right. So let's turn to a story near and dear to my heart. On Friday, in a landmark case, the Third District Federal Court of Appeals ruled in an en banc. That's a French term, en, then second word banc, which means full court decision. And let me tell you why that's important. Typically, a court of appeal, when the one of the federal court of appeals, hears an appeal of a lower case, they typically do it with a three-judge panel. But when it's been decided by a three-judge panel, the losing party can appeal and say, well, we want to have this heard again, but we want to have it heard by the full court because we think the three-judge panel got it wrong. Well, to avoid that tap dance, the federal third district federal court of appeals, which is for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Connecticut, I believe, heard a case about New Jersey's since 1990. New Jersey has banned rifles that they deem to be quote assault
Mhm.
weapons, and they've also had a magazine limit says you can't have a magazine in your gun that holds more than 10 rounds. Well, in a 10-5 decision, 10-5, 2-1 margin, the uh, the federal district court of appeals um, overturned that. So both of those things are unconstitutional. Now, reacting to that decision, our governor Mickey, who's a woman, Governor Mickey Sherrill stated, "quote We will not back down from extreme right-wing attempts to weaken the laws in New Jersey." Now, one has to wonder if she was aware that the judge who wrote the majority opinion was a Joe Biden appointee and was joined by several other Democrat appointed judges. Uh, does she does she know that, or does she,
Yeah.
because basically she's referring to this Biden appointed judge and other Democrats
Mhm.
who sided with majority as quote right wing extremists.
Mhm.
So yeah, she's either clueless or she's lying, but it looks like everybody, including me, I had to get rid of a bunch of when I moved from Colorado to New Jersey. I had to sell one of my guns because it qualified as a under New Jersey definition assault weapon, and I had a bunch of standard capacity magazine. They refer to them as high capacity. If you have a full size 9 millimeter pistol like police officers carry, the
Mhm.
standard pistol carrier has a magazine that carries 15 to 17 rounds. So I had a bunch of, full size regular nine, nothing unusual, just like police officers carry. And they all were 15, 16, 17. I had to get rid of them. I couldn't bring them with me to New Jersey. So uh, thank goodness that's been overturned. All right. You want to move on to another city in crisis? You want to go on
Yeah.
to Seattle?
What's
All right.
happening to our country?
Well, let's go on to Seattle. Now, this is Katie Wilson, the self-avowed socialist. And remember, we talked about New Jersey, about Colorado having a 40% office vacancy rate in
Yes.
Denver.
Mhm.
Well, so does Seattle. And so here's this guy's a doctor, PhD, Dr. Stephen Turley, commenting on Seattle's problems. And you're going to hear, what's her name? Katie, she's the new mayor of Chicago. Here we go. Not Chicago, Seattle.
5 months into her tenure, Mayor Katie Wilson is staring down a $488 million projected deficit over 3 years, with a $175 million gap that must be closed in the next budget cycle alone. And her response, you're not going to believe it. She circulated a memo directing every city department cut their budgets by 5 to 10%. She went full Republic. She went full Doge. I kid you not. She had no choice but to cut programs and services after promising more programs and more services in her campaign. But the cuts, of course, aren't going to be big enough to solve the deficit. So she went back to being a Democrat and in turn floated a local capital gains tax, which city staff estimated would take 2 years to implement and raise at best, 40 million, a drop in the bucket of the near $500,000 she needs to raise. She floated a new city income tax, which is illegal under Washington state law. She proposed creating a self-funded fire district to move the fire department's $350 million budget off the general fund's books, and the firefighters' own union shot it down as logistically impossible on her timeline. The woman who campaigned on taxing her way to utopia has now run out of other people's money, and she has no plan. And she has no plan because Katie Wilson's budget catastrophe exposes the fundamental, irreducible contradiction at the heart of progressive taxation. The core promise of democratic socialism, as practiced in cities like Seattle, is very simple. We'll tax the rich, fund the poor, and build a more equal and equitable society. It's really that simple. It's a morally intuitive pitch. It's politically popular. But it's also economically self-defeating every single time. And that's because socialism treats capital as a fixed resource to be redistributed. Just 5 months.
Yep. So again, and I think Mondami will be singing the same tune here by around the next budget cycle. So the only reason he balanced his budget, he got bailed out by Albany from the state. So anyway, any thoughts on
yeah, it's just another large, Portland, Seattle, all these large cities that are heading down the wrong path.
Yeah. All right. So let me know if you want to buy this product. So wastewater treatment plants, they have a lot of human waste, solid human waste. Well, Washington, D.C. has been taking that solid human waste, which typically was going to a landfill, and they are now treating it, baking it, sanitizing it, and selling it and bagging it as fertilizer.
Yeah,
and
I
they're
can
making
see that. I mean, things like farm manure, cow manure. I mean, that's quality stuff.
Yep. And when you look at it, it kind of looks like ground coffee when you look at it. So,
Yeah.
So would you buy bagged human waste?
I mean, we buy, so many of us buy animal waste.
Well, that's what Washington, D.C. is doing. They are, again, and when you look at how they treat it, they take it, they and then every day they have thousands of pounds every day, and they take it and they have these big drying ovens, and then you grind it up, and when they're all done, it looks like ground coffee, and the baking kills any parasites or bacteria, so it is sterile. And it's nutrition rich, and they're making a ton of money. They were experimenting last year. They were using it on city and federal properties where they had flower beds and lawns and whatnot. And now that the test has proven to be good, they're selling it to neighboring communities in Virginia and Maryland. So anyway, you can buy. They call it humanure, not manure, but humanure. Anyway, you can look at the link or just Google human waste as fertilizer, and you can maybe buy some. All right. We talked about this last year, and I want to talk about it again this year. So last week they gave 3,000 kids guns, and they put them all in the same spot for 5 days. How many of those kids you think got shot?
Zero.
And what am I talking about?
Probably local high school rifle team.
No, it was the trap and skeet, the National Trap and Skeet Championships.
Which is essentially a rifle team.
Well, that's shotguns, not rifle. Shotgun. Trap and skeet. You trap and skeet with a shotgun, not a rifle. Anyway, it's the High School USA Clay Target Championship. But I was surprised at this. Even though 3,000 kids were competing, and this was in Ohio, the organization that sponsors it's the U.S. Clay Target. Do you know how many kids are participating in high school and colleges around the country? How many participating members they have?
Oh, I'm sure there's thousands.
55,832. A,
Yeah, good for
a,
them.
a lot of Midwest high schools and down south, a lot of high schools. You know, when I was younger, I was on a high school rifle team and several of the neighboring high schools, and that was in New Jersey, by the way. I was on a rifle team. There wasn't enough open ground for trap and skeet, but down south and Midwest, uh, uh, trap and skeet is a high school sport, competitive high school sport. And in college, there's a lot of colleges that have. I don't think Penn State has any trap and skeet, do they?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not even at any of the remote campuses.
I don't know. I'd have to look that one
Right.
up.
But the point is, by the way, you give 3,000 kids with guns, you put them in the same place for a week, and nobody gets shot. Folks, it is not the gun, it's the people.
Exactly.
It is not
Absolutely.
the gun, it is the people. Because you had 3,000 kids with uh, with guns all in the same place, you know, for 5 days. Nobody got shot. So it's
Yeah.
folks, it's not the guns. All right. Moving on to UK versus Poland. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about, you know, this price of a stamp went up by 4 cents from 78
Yep.
to 82 cents. And the post office, you know, last year lost 9 billion. And that 4 cents was only going to generate like 1.6 billion in revenue, but their costs are going to go up by more than 1 point. So they're still going to lose 9 billion. And I said, I wonder how that compares to the UK, United Kingdom, Great Britain. By the way, Great Britain isn't much bigger than California. You know that, right?
Yeah. Actually, I actually thought California was bigger.
You might be right. Do you know how much it costs to mail a first class letter just in Great Britain, which is let's call it about the same size as California? I mean, you look at how far you can mail a letter from Pennsylvania to Alaska for 82 cents.
Yeah.
You want to know what you pay in the United Kingdom to mail it from one end of the United Kingdom to another?
It's probably a lot more, I'm guessing.
How about, dude, the U.S. equivalent of $2.40?
Wow.
$2.40. Now, by the way, so I said, okay, well, what if the U.S. You know raised it, you know, to that? Well, our post office would make money if assuming the volume of mail didn't decline, which is a big assumption. But even at 60% of that, which would be a buck 44, that would put the U.S. Post Office back into at least a break-even position, even with another 5% decline in mail and package. So, just wondering, again, it's Congress. They won't let the post office do it. They're afraid of the political backlash. And of course, the other option would be to reduce residential mail delivery to 3 days per week. Half your town would get it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the rest of the town would get it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, with the option of going to the post office on your off day if there was a letter you needed desperately.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both agreed not a hardship. There's
Yeah, I
no
mean,
mail.
I mentioned before in our little town, we don't even have mail service. We just
Right.
have a post office, and it's like going to the community center.
Right. And there's not a single piece of mail I've gotten in the past 3 years that couldn't have waited another day or two. So anyway,
Yeah.
all right. The only question is, do our politicians have the political will to make the hard but necessary decisions to prevent that type of ongoing loss of taxpayer dollars? My
Mhm.
answer is, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. All right. Ready for our taxpayer relief shot?
Yeah, we still have a whole 10 minutes left.
All right. Well, then if we have 10 minutes left, then let me play the intro to our taxpayer relief shot. Here we go. And here's why we call it. Here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And as we've discussed many times, if you arrest a thug, first and you put him on trial, he gets a court-appointed attorney. You get the prosecuting attorney and the judge and the jury. It's 200,000 for the trial, and that's 100,000 a year. Well, 80 to 100,000 a year to put him in jail. So if you put him on trial and he gets sentenced to 10 years in jail, you've just blown $1 million worth of taxpayer money, and that's why we call them taxpayer relief shot. And again, folks, these are not rare. I have a dozen of these to pick from every week. Um, so this is not, but you never hear, for some reason, when a cop shoots somebody, it becomes national news. When a citizen, either homeowner, somebody in a car, or a store owner shoots somebody, it never makes the news outside that local market area. And I'm just wondering, is there a bias that, you know, they don't report that? But this one comes from Charleston. This poor guy, he's been being harassed by a road rage guy. He tries to escape. He pulls over. He gets out of the way. He pulls over. The guy blows past him. He thinks he's done, and the guy turns around and comes back. And here's what happens.
Tonight about a deadly shooting they say started as a road rage incident. Police say it happened right near Greenbrier Street and Dietrich Boulevard.
Abby Lord spoke with one neighbor who says that he was shocked when he heard about what happened.
I hate for anybody to have to meet their end like that.
A neighbor still processing the news after a late night shooting now being investigated as a homicide near the intersection of Greenbrier Street and Dietrich Boulevard.
And I knew it was something big because there were so many so fast.
Police say the incident started with one driver acting in an erratic and aggressive manner and a second driver pulling over to avoid any further confrontation. Investigators say the aggressive driver then made a U-turn, came back, got out of his car, and walked toward the other driver. During that confrontation, police say the man allegedly struck the other driver multiple times, leading the other driver to pull a gun and shoot him in the stomach around 10:45 Monday night. The man was taken to a hospital where police say he later died.
I really hate that.
Investigators say the driver who fired the shot immediately called 911, stayed at the scene, and has cooperated fully. And right now, no charges have been filed. Abby Lord, WSAZ, Charleston.
Now, note, by the way, the aggressive driver got out of his car, walked back to this guy who had pulled over to end it, and began striking him. Do you think he was justified in shooting the guy that was punching him?
I mean, yeah, in theory, that's self-defense.
Self-defense, yeah, serious bodily injury.
Yeah.
And by the way, there were now 26 states where you don't need a permit from the sheriff to carry a concealed weapon. I think West Virginia might be one of them. And we haven't had any from West Virginia in the past, but like Texas, you go in some of these rural, you go to Mississippi, you go to Arkansas, you got to figure that half the people, at least half the guys have a gun in their car. So
absolutely.
So you want to think twice before, coming over and attacking somebody in their car, because 50-50 chance that person in one of those rural states or southern states is going to have a gun in the car. All right. Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Nope. Happy 201 episode.
201. Thank you very much for doing that research for me. All right. Folks, I want to thank everybody who took the time to listen to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your day. I hope you found the topics as interesting and important as I did, and if so, hope you continue to listen to the podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, give producer Susan a day or so, and you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com. Just remember, Jerzee is spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee, Jerzee Joe, no space. If you'd like to email me, if you want me to send you any of these story links directly, any of the video or printed story links you heard me reference, all you have to do is send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com. And if you have a suggested show topic, same thing. And if you have a question, again, joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and two E's. And with that, producer Susan, I'll say goodnight and talk to you next week.
Jerzee Joe.
You take care. Bye-bye.